So here we are on the 5th turn of Shanghai Trader. Some little deals were cut before the shipping roll. A lot of money came out. English cleared over 150,000, but they paid a significant amount, 30,000, to put guards there. And you might ask, does that even make sense? And it's really at the iffy level because they have two warehouses. If they build another factory, someone's going to close down one of their warehouses. There aren't going to be guards for both of them. The Japanese want to guard their own. Although maybe if they had been offered 60, they would have given both guards because they're kind of at the bottom end of things. The customs inspector is able to pretty much take one out. But the risk here is that somebody would go to the tongs and take the second one out too. They're able to guard their trading posts with the police, and nobody was willing to pay more than $5,000. The Russians offered $5,000 for this, so the British have kept it in the bund just to help protect that. And that's about it for deals, really. Nobody traded territories, which might be, we're getting close to where it might start making sense with the US and Japan sharing one here. If some of the others end up shared, it could end up with a monopoly type trading deal where, oh yeah, I'll give you this for that so that I can get the, special, but it's fairly easy to boot someone. It's $10,000. You have a 2/3 chance to knock one of their dudes out. So I don't know how much trading is really liable to happen. One thing I haven't done is initiative. I'll set that up, and then we go on into the winter turn. We got shipping, one to each this turn. So I've played through starting of autumn now in the 5th turn, and we see a lot of motion going around, but the U.S. finally picked up the Temple of the Jade Buddha, which means they can start mugging people and collecting cash. The French finally made it to the banks, and they tossed a whole bunch of money in there. The Japanese went to the banks and didn't actually do anything, but nobody knows that unless they go to the Daily Mail to find out how much money somebody has. What else is going on? We've got a Japanese factory now, which is why they had very little money. The Japanese picked up the Buddhist monastery, so they'll be able to get that. And that actually has a really nice collection of money. If I'd realized how much, 5,000 per turn from each coolie in a district for each monk. That's per turn, per seasonal turn. So if there's 2 coolies in a district, they pull $10,000 each season there. It doesn't say who they get it from. It says extract from. The rules aren't absolutely clear about this. In fact, they're completely not clear. I don't know if this money is stolen from people or if it's just an income. I'm going to play it just as an income because the coolies themselves probably are making some money, etc. But extract almost sounds like it should be coming from the other player's pockets, in which case it becomes a very vile, a dangerous ability, having someone play the monk against you. So for one thing, I was considering, I want to protect my own people, and the way I'm playing it, that'll be illegal, that'll be reasonable, but you wouldn't want to do that. In other cases, you'd want to collect the money from other players' coolies. Anyway, collecting from your own seems in the spirit of something or another. Anybody else? Oh, the poor Germans. They just can't get enough of these Chinese women, and they spent 2 turns in the brothels. Threw away close to $100,000 there. The Russians got the Great Orient Shipping Line, so now they control the boat, and they're just going to send it wherever they want. each turn, which means some things will not get serviced that otherwise would have. Alright, I guess that's about it. I go on to the last turn. We got the picnic races. The Japanese were careful to hold enough money so that they don't get screwed by that. And the turn ends, the U.S. was unable to find a use for their muggers. The English were hiding behind police protection. Other people were hiding up here behind police protection. Other people were outside the international district. Custom inspector. Ooh, who do I hit? The Germans got to do some stuff. They are going... They forgot their special abilities here. They're going to hit... I think the French already put their pile away. Of course, they could get more. I'm going to hit the Russians because I think they're the biggest threat in the game right now. And I'm going to shut down their service. I don't think they can offer me enough. It would have to be 40,000. And they're not. See, the Russians had a bad string of luck, actually. And that's why Germany is kind of iffy about that. But they can't do Britain, and France has already pocketed their money. The Russians ended up gambling at the racetrack. They get a +2 bonus on that. All the money got lost to the Germans. And then they ended up trying to go get a dock location, and they went gambling some more for Fantan, and they lost half their cash there. So, you know, they suffered some definite hits there that make them maybe not the ultimate target. But the French have enough money put away, presumably, that they may not be going back. Like, they might leave the country with what they have. Speaking of which, next turn, got to roll a die at the beginning of the turn, see if the game is going to end that turn. That happens possibly every turn. The revolution's coming closer. Alright, I guess we go over to 6. We're going to see some new stuff showing up, like the monks. Put them over here. And let's see what else. The Germans didn't use their spy either. That they're going to use against the English. And we'll make a roll and see how many turns the English lose. 6 means, I think, 3 turns? Yeah, so they're out for 3 turns. And then I'm going to need a die or something to mark it in. That will restrict their actions pretty heavily for the rest of for this next turn, and may mean that they're stuck in the country if the revolution comes. Okay, and that's a powerful use of this sucker, is you can stop somebody from getting out of the country. I'll go onward to the next cycle. We're going to see some heavier income here because not only the Japanese but the French have picked up a factory. We have additional factories. The U.S. has an additional factory, as did the Russians, that nobody's using. They don't have them. They don't have a full pyramid to support it. But they bought them as opportunity items because the particular they were aiming for a warehouse in the same location. And well, if they get another warehouse, they need another factory. All right, onward. So I finished the cycle turn, and we go to the winter. The game's not ending this turn. Made the roll for that. That didn't happen. I had forgotten to collect money for the English for the Fantan gambling, and I tried to fudge that. This is a problem, especially solitaire, but even when it's not solitaire with this game, is events don't always tell you what's going on. So, for example, looking at the rules for where Fantan gambling is actually handled, they don't mention the French town casino. So it's up to the guy who owns it to remember, and that's tough for me, solitaire, and it's not all that easy in a multiplayer game. I know we used to have a guy named Clueless Dave who would play with us, and a lot. And there's no way he would catch that. You would never pay. Now, there's no specifying in this game like there is in Monopoly, for example. Hey, if you don't notice and call, it just doesn't happen. I'm assuming that would be the right way to play this, but all the same, it is kind of obnoxious that you have to pay that much attention to everything that's going on. And it's definitely a hindrance for a solo play. Between the rules and other factors, it is hard. There is no single place where everything's kept track of. Another oops, I forgot about the collusion phase. And it was a big one this time. I jumped into it. So the Japanese sold guards. This dock is going to get serviced. We're pretty sure of that because the Russians own the shipping company. They can service it every time, but they still have to, because of the die rolls, service one other dock in the summer. Anyway, the French said, well, I want guards too. The Russians weren't willing to pay, I think it was $20,000 for it, is what the French wanted to. So then we go to down here. The Japanese protected their own trading posts, but they also got, I think, $10,000 to protect the French club's trading posts. Significant amount of cash coming in there as well. And then on top of all that, the Russians tried to sell that extra shipment, and they asked $60,000 from the British and US, or a match from the British Germans. Now the US was unwilling to put up $30,000, and the Germans are unwilling to put up anything at all, because they've already talked to the Russians, and if it goes for free, it's going to go to them. They're not in the best shape, and they've actually fallen quite far behind in the situation. I think they're at 7, 9, 9, 10 in terms of total locations. But board presence isn't that important, because when it comes down to it, it's how you time your exit. Right now, if the French get out of the country, they win. If they don't make it out of the country and everyone else makes it out, the Japanese win with a $5,000. Whether or not you can get out and whether or not you've squirreled money away are key and important issues. What you've got on the board here and what you have in your pocket is almost meaningless at this point in the game. And the question becomes, gee, how much does France have in there? Because it's a lot. And what can I do about it? I can't assassinate him until he tries to escape. And why are they still sticking around if it's a huge amount? And what is a huge amount here? These kind of questions are what make this game very, very difficult. I heard some people discussing, well, I read some people discussing Cosmic Encounter on one of those. How big a differential do you have from the average? Some people really hate it. And they would hate this for the same kind of reason, is you really can't predict everything well enough, and you're going to get shafted. And whatever you build up, you still can't be sure that that's what's going to win you the game. It comes down to a lot of luck at the end, no matter what. I like that. I like that in both games, and in Junta as well. But I can see where let me build an economic engine and, ooh, look, I win with it. Thinking is not going to work for these kind of players. Alright, well, I'll come back to play. Game's taken a more bitter turn. The Russians have decided to roll in old Chinatown itself. They went to the Terror of the Tongs, paid $20,000. They get themselves a dragon somewhere. There it is. And they're going to try to burn down, whatever, terrorize a warehouse. On a 1 through 4, they find the right location. Otherwise, they may end up somewhere else. They rolled a 6. That means they get to roll again. They can still end up there, or they could end up at the French one, or they could end up... They rolled a 5. They have destroyed a French $50,000 factory. And now they go back. And that's where things get sort of neat here, is you have the ability to take away the other person's stuff very easily if you're willing to spend some effort on it. The Russians didn't see much they could do for themselves. They're falling behind. They don't have a lot of money. They have a lot of possessions on the board. They wanted to see, okay, let's see if I can nail down some of these people who are doing too well. Well, as I said, the nastiness got turned up a notch. Now the Japanese went into old Chinatown to visit the brothels and ended up successfully seducing the French, I don't know what they are, overseer, I think, in charge of the warehouse. So that warehouse is now out of commission, essentially, until the next revenue phase, which means that the pyramid that the French have, which actually doesn't exist. I don't know why they went for that. They want to hit them? No, I think they wanted to hit the Russians. The Russians are doing well. Okay, so they hit the Russians. Until the next... That means the Russian pyramid is no longer in existence, and they'll only be collecting for their trading post. Kind of an act of war. They didn't want to go for the Brits because the Brits aren't going to have a serviced one anyhow. They could have taken the manager, but that didn't seem very valuable. All right, as opposed to the Tongs, who actually burned the thing down, which is valuable. So now we go to the third summer turn. This is where there are going to be 2 ships. We put one there, and as per agreement, we sail one in here which services the Germans. Now the Germans and Russians have agreed to leave each other alone for this turn, which is kind of a pain for the Germans, but this is their price for being serviced and no one else being done so. So they would like to be hitting the Russians. They think the Russians are in the lead, but they don't know what else to do. And they can hit other people, and maybe other people hit the Russians for them, as the Japanese just did. Okay, well, that's the end of another year. So we'll go over. Got the Americans got hit by the Nazi spy, and what else happened here? The Japanese kept trying to play around in here. They ended up going fan-tan gambling again. They lost the 50,000 that they gained last time. Ooh, 25 of that goes to the Brits. Lucky them. One of the biggest things we saw is that the Russians were targeted and they lost the shipping, the Great Orient shipping. They will no longer get to pick where the ships go. We go back to following the chart now. The reason for that, the British especially started it, but the Germans jumped in, killed one as well, and grabbed... actually, I think the Americans killed the next one to finish it off, but then the Germans went in and grabbed one. The point is, that thing is just so potent in certain cases. There's a lot of control over who's got what, and where you can, what gets serviced and what doesn't. Now, what we see is almost everything that got serviced. The Germans did not get hit. The Japanese had the customs inspector go, but the guards shoot him away. Somebody went for the Germans. Do not worry. It just didn't work. The Americans also tried to mug the British here. And the Brits are like, oh shit, man. I shouldn't be hanging out where my police aren't. And now, this is hard, because you can't wipe out the coolies if the police or the monks are there as easily. But you can't grow without actually going someplace, so it's kind of painful. Oh, the Brits forgot to use one of their abilities. Let's see if they can still use her. Yeah, you really want to use her early in the year. Oh, I don't know if they had it at the beginning of the year. Well, I'll give it to them now, and I'm not going to let them do anything with it. But the mugging would have been really cool because the Americans would have taken the British cash. It's definitely a point where we got to start thinking about getting out of here. There's no guarantee when the game's going to end now. What I was saying is it's going to end on a 6, and I'm going to stick to that with a guarantee that it ends on the 10th turn. But you could also do it progressively, like 6, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever, and add a little bit more incremental chance. Some players, like the Japanese, are thinking, if I get off early and don't get shot, because you could always get shot, maybe my 5,000 and I'll be the only person who survives. Of course, you don't need to have put any money in for that, so it's kind of a hard choice. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this one and send it up.